Interrompemos esse podcast para perguntar: quem você quer ser?
Designer, engenheira,
pedagoga,
administrador.
Quer saber? O Senac EAD é nota máxima no MEC. Tem cursos de diversas áreas, com conteúdo elaborado por especialistas do mercado e professores mestres e doutores. Ainda tem o Senac Carreiras, conectando estudantes a vagas de emprego em todo o país. Saiba mais em ead.senac.br/graduação.
Hello, and welcome to the Great Pop Culture Debate Primer for our summer special episode devoted to the best 1980s duet. I'm Eric Rezsnyak, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know heading into this episode, which will be available Monday, August 12th on all podcast platforms. To listen to our warm-up for this episode, in which the panelists discuss their favorite 80s duets that did not make the bracket, become a Patreon subscriber of our podcast today. For this episode, we had a public poll that included just about every successful duet released on pop, rock, or R&B radio during the 1980s. A few dozen people took the poll. We tallied the votes, and the 16 most popular options were added to a bracket. Then our panel, myself and GPCD regulars Derek Makita, Johnny Minogue, and Kate Rakulia, gushed about these gloriously over-the-top songs, argued about the matchups, and insulted each other, all for your amusement. The round one matchups for this debate are Islands in the Stream by Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers versus On My Own by Patti LaBelle and Michael McDonald. Put a Little Love in Your Heart by Al Green and Annie Lennox versus Endless Love by Lionel Richie and Diana Ross. We've Got Tonight by Sheena Easton and Kenny Rogers versus Ebony and Ivory by Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder. Easy Lover by Philip Bailey and Phil Collins versus Almost Paradise by Mike Reno and Ann Wilson. Up Where We Belong by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes versus Dancing in the Streets by David Bowie and Mick Jagger. I've Had the Time of My Life by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes versus After All by Cher and Peter Cetera. Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves by Aretha Franklin and Annie Lennox versus Guilty by Barbra Streisand and Barry Gibb. I Knew You Were Waiting For Me by Aretha Franklin and George Michael versus Somewhere Out There by James Ingram and Linda Ronstadt. And that's it. That's our Schmaltzy 16. So make sure you head over to your podcast platform of choice tomorrow to find out which song we ultimately decide is the best 80s duet ever. We've covered a bunch of 80s music on this podcast, but this was our first time really focusing on the superlative cheesy power ballads, and it was an absolute delight. By the way, this episode has been available to our Patreon supporters for the past 6 months. Did you know that we have certain episodes available exclusively to our Patreon supporters? It's true, and that's on top of all the other great extra content and swag you get for supporting our show. Tiers start at $5 a month, so please head to patreon.com/greatpopculturedebate to subscribe today. Our next 2 Patreon exclusives will be going up this month. Thank you for listening, and make sure you subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And head to greatpopculturedebate.com, where you'll find the polls that determine what we talk about next, and loads of cool bonus content, including my top 10 best duets of the 1990s list. And have you subscribed to our weekly newsletter? It tells you about what's new in movies, TV shows, music, video games, and more. Head to the subscribe section of our website and sign up today. See you over in the main episode.